Hello and welcome to another Steam Powered PD. Today is May 11th, a Monday. Hopefully it's a good Monday for everybody. It's finally getting a little bit better outside as far as where I am. I hope it is where you are as well. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the SAMR model and what that means. And what we're talking about is basically technology integration and what that looks like when you're taking what you're already doing and hopefully adding technology in a purposeful and a meaningful way. And so we'll kind of look at examples of that, how that works, and so forth. The other thing I wanted to do before we kind of dived into today's topic was showcase a little bit of how to get around some of the past examples we've had, some of the past videos we've had. I've had a number of people ask me, like, how do I find one, from a before, or how do I revisit a topic that I want to? And so I just want to go through this list right here, the easiest way to do that. So if you are in the district, if you go to rsu19.info, so here are, many of you probably been here before, but here's some of the educational tools and resources we mentioned. This is the live link, so anytime if you miss the email, or I try to send an email out every day, but if you miss one, you can click on that and it'll go to it. This will subscribe to all the videos as I've been posting them, so if you want to go back and make sure you always catch the latest one. Your questions and comments are right here, obviously. And then this is always whatever today's topic is. So as I mentioned, if there are topics, today, if I have links or anything like that I want to share, they'll always be in here. And so this will be like the latest and greatest of that. And then if I keep scrolling down here, these are all previous topics. So these are all the previous shows we've had before. So if you were looking for one, or if somebody asked you, geez, how do I, we were learning about Google Earth Web, or looking about, Google Calendar, this is where I would start. I send them the link to these videos. These are the videos, the YouTube that we've been sharing right here. And then if there's additional extra credit, we talk about different things on the right side. Those will link directly to that as well. And then the final, if I keep scrolling down here, again, if you're in the district, if you do need that Tech PD sign in, you can come right here, fill that out, and click submit. If you do go to this website, but you're not in rsu19.net, this will just appear blank for you. That's kind of why I put it down at the bottom. So hopefully that gets you around a little bit. If you do want to kind of look to see, look at previous episodes or that kind of thing. The easiest way, if you do want to subscribe, that just means that every time there's a new episode, you'll automatically get it by default. You'll just have it right there. Cool. All right, so today we're going to talk about the SAMR model and what that is and what that means for this situation we're in right now, virtual education, and what that means with the SAMR model. A little bit of definition before we start. What is SAMR? This was actually developed by Dr. Ruben Pereira up in UMaine. He's at the University of Maine in Orono. But this is really known, at least countrywide, if not worldwide, as far as a technology integration model. The first S in SAMR stands for substitution. And this is the idea where you basically are recreating what you're already doing physically or analog in the class, but doing it virtually or with technology. And so if you think about our first days of what we've been doing in this situation, the kids were at home, we were trying to do video calls, just kind of replicate what we're doing in the classroom. And that's a little bit where we're at. In this situation, it's very difficult to go beyond that. So certainly the expectation, if we get substitution, that's a great place to start. But that's the idea where you're just basically replicating what you're doing. You're not adding something new. The augmentation of the A in SAMR technology acts as a direct substitute with functional improvement. And I'll show you some examples there as well. But that idea where it's not just doing a digital version of what you already did. It's actually adding value that you didn't have before. And we do have examples of that we use in the district. And even now in this situation, there are times when it makes sense to do something just a little bit better than you could do before, even though we didn't have face-to-face contact. Modification. Technology allows for significant task redesign. So this is a situation where you did it one way for a long time, and now you have the technology skills to go back and revisit that same aspect, that same project, that same assignment, and do it in a different way, hopefully better. I know I've been talking this a lot as far as in the district, as far as, all the work we've been doing lately, as far as, virtual learning and work connected with kids virtually like we're doing right now, how different that is. But also at the same time, as I mentioned, it's never wasted. Anything we're learning right now, all these new tools and ways of doing things, we'll revisit them later on. I would like to think that it's going to be very unlikely we'll ever have another snow day again. It'll be distance learning days in the sense where, yes, we're not physically in the same space together, but we're still able to connect virtually in some capacity. And then finally, redefinition. Technology allows the creation of new tasks previously inconceivable. And this is a kind of a step beyond, like we go above and beyond even what was possible before. So a good example of that, we are having a project right now that our students have been working on is our old school in Nokomis is being torn down and it's kind of in mid-process right now, which we knew a long time as the new building was being built. And so one of the things we wanted to do is go around and take 360 photos of every single classroom or every single room in the building to have a virtual tour. So once the building is gone, we'll always have a digital record of that building that we can, kind of put a VR headset or just kind of virtually kind of walk around the building. And so that's something that our kids have been working on. We've been working on in Nokomis Warrior Broadcasting for the last couple of years. And we're getting closer as far as being able to publish it. But that's a redefinition. That's a new type of format, a new medium that literally would not exist without the technology applicable to it. You couldn't recreate that really on paper. I mean, you could have drawing, could have photos, but that immersive feel, the idea of having audio in the background and having video and having, 360, images of the rooms as you walk around them, that's something that technology allows that just wouldn't be able to be recreated elsewhere. Now, the suite that we're using, again, we all know the Google Apps Suite. We've been covering that a lot. That's kind of our tool set that we have to work with. And we have more than this and sometimes less than this, depending on what we're trying to do. But it's worth mentioning kind of the premise of this, how this works. You hear the terminology, the cloud. What that means, it's indistinguishable now from the internet. But for a long time, that was a marketing term. What that meant is that the idea where if you were a network administrator and you were diagramming your networks, you'd have firewalls and laptops, it can be PCs, computers, or whatever, and then you'd have out there. And the cloud represented beyond your walls. So anything beyond your own internal network would be the cloud. Now we use Google Apps, again, district-wide pretty easily. But the big distinction there is they're not on the computers themselves. You're basically working on their servers. You're working in the cloud at all time. Again, this is something we take for granted now. We don't really think much about it because we do it all the time. But it is a big change, especially when you compare it to other services and the way that other services are kind of trying to do something similar. A good example of this is Dropbox, if you've heard of that one, or even iCloud. They use the internet to sync between devices, but the original content is stored on each device. So, for example, if I take a type of paper on a Mac, type in pages, take a document, I can sync that through iCloud to my iPad or to my iPhone, but it doesn't actually live in the cloud. It just is syncing between them. And so the difference here is I would have to have those type of devices for me to work with it. I'd have to have an Apple device to be able to work with that document. I couldn't just open up pretty much anything. And that's the real difference between the way that one of the reasons why we went so hard on Google Suite initially is because it didn't matter what type of device you had. If you had a Mac, a PC, a Chromebook, a phone, a tablet, didn't matter what you had, you could work with the information. And a lot of our students, of course, they wouldn't have necessarily Apples at home unless we gave them to them. Most of them would have, an old XP machine or who knows what. So this is really allows us to be able to work on no matter what device you're using, you can kind of access your information and go from there. Another really important point is one thing that we're definitely mindful in RSU19 is being aware of the data silo. And that's the idea of where you put information into something, but it's either impossible or very difficult to get it out. A really good example of this, I think, is Facebook, where Facebook will allow you to make posts and, you can do text and images and videos or whatever, but they don't give you an easy way out of Facebook. They don't give you a single click and I can say, okay, I want to take all my stuff out of it. They're actually giving more and more tools now to do that kind of thing, but it's still not perfect. They don't want you to leave Facebook, right? If you delete your account, it still takes 3 months before it actually gets deleted. And so Google very explicitly does this. They allow you to get out of Google Apps if you want to. And so we work with that with our seniors, graduating seniors. There's a service called google.com/takeout. And if I pull that up, this is what it looks like. So this is an ability for me to take out all of my data. These are all the different sources of data I have in my Google Suite. If I want to look at that, let's just look at Google Drive for a second. So I'll deselect all, scroll down here to Drive, right there. And so if I wanted to download my stuff from Google Drive, I want to take it out of there. I could say, do I want all the drive or just want certain folders? How do I want to download it? Do I want to download them as Word documents or PDFs, or do I want them as PowerPoints or spreadsheets, or how do I want to download those files if I do take them? Advanced settings. Do I want to include the name and uploaded version? So again, it really gives me that ability to download things or remove things from the account. And so this is really beneficial for our students that are transitioning, especially, getting to the end of the year. They're going to be graduating. Eventually over the summer, we will, stop their accounts. We won't delete them. What we typically do is we suspend them. That means if there's ever a time in the future where students needed to come back and re-log into their accounts to be able to get a piece of information, we have that ability. We don't delete their accounts. We just store them. And so This gives them, though, if they want to download all their Drive files and take it with them, and think about really what an educational statement that makes. It's really important, I think, where it's not a case where all the work you just did for 12 years, when you're done, who cares, maybe mom will put in her ad somewhere or something like that. It's actually taking it with them. And because it's digital, it should be easier than ever. Another really important distinction is in the domain versus outside the domain. Again, and this is that transition point where students are going from the school account that they've had and transitioning to their own personal accounts. We use inside our domain, and that's not been a real big problem. Every once in a while, there are certain individuals, usually high school students, who will come to me, Mr. Kelly, I don't really want to use your school account. I have my own Gmail account. I'll just use that. The problem is twofold. There's two real major problems with that. One is if a student forgets their password for some reason, like, I forgot my password, I can't get back in. On a Gmail account, they're out of luck. I can't really help them with that. I mean, I can show them where they can go try to reset their password, but I can't force that if they've really forgotten it. Different than in a Google Apps domain, we can reset their password in 2 seconds, and so no big deal. The other bigger thing, and this happens, is when we were sharing computers, let's say at a library or a place where there's a shared computer lab, if a student came down, sat down and worked on their account, did some work, got up, and let's say they closed the browser and walked away, but didn't actually sign out. And another student sat down and said, oh, I want to delete things or whatever, do some damage. They can restore up to 30 days anything that was created. And that's a really important point where if you think about it, anything 30 days old, you can go back and bring back up again if you deleted by accident or if it was deleted by somebody else. So they usually between those two things are enough to keep the students inside the domain as we go forward. Also, it's really important to distinguish between a personal Gmail account and your professional school account. I know, we talk about this. It's kind of difficult for some reason, jumping back and forth between accounts. I mentioned this before. Let me just jump up on here. I can be at google.com and signed in my upper right. I'm in Chrome right now. And here's my school account, but then I have another account here. And sometimes it's a little bit tricky. Like it looks like it's switched over, but for some reason it hasn't. It hasn't like gone back and forth between the two. So we just want to be very mindful of that. If you are on a mobile device, if you're on your phone, or if you're on, students are on their laptops, their Chromebooks, they use their school account for schoolwork and they use their personal account for, other things. So we're really kind of cognizant of that as well. Also, one login for many services, right? So, I don't know about you, but I certainly login fatigue. We have one more login and one more password. So the idea where you can, as we grow, as we develop more things, and now with the ability to add third-party apps, we've been able to add, dozens, if not hundreds of different, third-party applications and extensions and add-ons, that kind of stuff to allow more functionality than we even had before. We mentioned about signing into the Chrome browser as far as that's like a portable desktop following you. In RSU 19, most of our students, if they're using a device, are using Chromebooks. Like I would say probably 90%, maybe more. And so there are a handful that might have PCs because if they have, if their parents have PCs or using it that way. But if they're working on a school-provided machine, they're probably working on a Google Chromebook. Automatic backup, again, a huge benefit, of course, is having students, being able to just back up. The only drawback of that, and I've seen this, is they forget to back up if they're starting to use other programs that don't do it automatically. So more and more of our programs we're using, because they're web-based, it doesn't really matter. They're automatically backing up every few seconds. But every once in a while, students will use a different program. Like we have, for example, in our IT department, they'll use SketchUp, which is an offline downloaded program, and it doesn't have auto backup. You have to back it up every few minutes. And so we have to remind the students constantly to do that. The real purpose for this is the collaboration, the ability to collaborate between, just keep it private, individual, between one student to another student or a teacher to student or back and forth, and finally for publishing for the world. We talked about that ability to publish. And basically, as we're getting more and more public with this stuff, then we are doing more virtual. We want that to be as easy as possible. So if we do have a student that wants to publish something that makes sense to, let's say they're going for a college interview or a job interview, and what we would do is we'd actually use that, process so that we can say, hey, this is, a video of me doing work, or this is my web page, my digital portfolio, or that kind of thing. And so the more we can streamline that process, the better it is. So here's the idea. This is when we talk about that SAMR model. This is kind of the next level, the augmentation, where we're able to add value. We're not just doing a lateral move. We're adding value to something that didn't exist before. So for example, this is our 25 books. So one of the standards we have in our district is every student has to read 25 books of different quantity, quality, range, and depth. That means they can't read 25 Goosebumps books. They have to read different genres, different authors, different topics, all that kind of stuff. And we keep track of them. And traditionally, it's been done by hand, right? A student write down, I read this book, and here's how many pages it was, and it was, this is what I showed, I read it, or whatever. You can imagine at the end of the year what happens to this piece of paper. Gets thrown away or just ignored or who knows what. And so really for years ago, we kind of decided that it's too bad, all that information is wasted. So we started using with certain teachers, Google Books to do the same kind of thing. What the benefit of it is built right into Google Books is they can build my library. So if I go to books.google.com, here's a book search just like you would typically have. Now, if you think about Google search as everything, and then Google image search is like a subset of that. Well, this is just Google Book Search, and it doesn't just search the titles and the authors of books. It actually searches inside the books themselves. But if you notice right here underneath there, it says My Library. I can click on that, and these can be their own books that students themselves have added. Now, they don't have to buy these books. They're just adding to the list, like, oh, I'd like to read this someday, or this would be a cool book to read. I can, read all these. Whoops, let me jump back here. I could say to read, or I'm reading now, or whatever it is. And if I want to, I can search inside the book itself. So I just added this book here. I can search inside the book. When I click search, this is not just searching Google Books in general. This is searching inside the book itself. And so the cool thing about that is actually show you inside the book. Thanks. Now this one I just chose Alice in Adventures in Wonderland just because it's a free one as far as copyright free. But again, I could add any book I wanted to just to store it there. So if I search inside of this book here for a word, it will show me sections of where that actual word is. Now you can imagine it's not just creating a list for the teachers of all the books they've read, it's creating a searchable database of every book you've ever read for the students themselves. So they can go back and search within their Google Books over here. Let me jump back one more. Under their shelves, they can do different shelves for each year, and they can search within that. It would actually search inside the book itself. Now, if it's a copyrighted book, it's not going to give them the entire book for free. It will give them little snippets. So if they have a certain word, it will give them, I believe, up to a paragraph around that search. And so they can find out, maybe looking for a quote or looking for where they read that thing or whatever it is. That would really help them. And that's what I'm talking about, this idea of extended beyond just a lateral move, where we're not just digitizing a virtual thing. We're actually taking it and adding value we couldn't do before. So here's the process. Now, we talked a lot about students digitizing their assignments, especially now in this virtual age that we're working with. The idea of students taking pictures of their work, or maybe they're doing it digitally. I had a teacher the other day ask me about having students do math work, and we're going to use Jamboard, that program I mentioned, a couple weeks ago, to basically work together so they can work synchronously at the same time. It is working like a whiteboard, basically, like a screen pad. They can use their touch screen, they can use their touchpad, and they can write on it, and they can work on math together at the same time. So they're digitizing their non-digital work. Then we're getting it into Google Drive. Google Drive is really just becoming the repository where they're storing that work. As we mentioned in Google Classroom, if teachers are careful about how they name it, that will help students as their folders are already named for them. Google Classroom is, of course, the management tool. It's just how we're giving it back and forth. They're storing their work in Google Drive. That's where it just lives because it's unlimited space. But we're using Classroom just a way so we can organize it and they can organize it back and forth as management process. And then finally, we'd like them to get to the point where they can publish the pieces that make sense for the world. So this is not meaning that's everything. This is not a comprehensive portfolio where everything they've ever done is public. It's students, especially graduating seniors or juniors, looking ahead, thinking, what things would I want to showcase, really to showcase me being, an effective learner? And if you think about, what things they want to show at a job interview or a college interview or that kind of stuff. So they're really cherry picking the best examples of their work. And the reason why it's easy for them to do is because it's already been digitized, it's already been organized, it's already where it should be, and they can just pick what they need to have going forward. This is an example I like to use. This is from years ago. Justin Kasperzak was a student we had in broadcasting, I don't even know, probably a decade ago now. But he used this to go to Appscom, which he actually had a website. He had different examples of video that he would upload. These were all work from school that he created. And again, he could just cherry pick the pieces that he needed because it wasn't everything he ever did. It's just the things that made sense to showcase. This brings us to the 4 C's. Now, this is a terminology you may have heard before: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. And so the idea is, what are the tools that we use that kind of touch on each of these? And again, I don't think this is a stretch. I think we do this kind of inherently in all the tools that we're using these days. Google Classroom is our communication tool. We're going back and forth with our students. Yes, we're using Gmail maybe, or we're using Google Meet to do video conferencing synchronously. But Classroom is really the hub for that. So we're kind of going back and forth with our kids and making sure they have the work they need. Gmail, as always, is communication-wise, as far as connecting with each other and keeping up on that. Calendar, I think this has, again, become more important than ever. The idea of scheduling. Now, when we're not able to see each other face-to-face, we have to be very respectful of how that works together for everybody. So each of these topics here, if you're looking, has we did a topic on them. We did one on Calendar, one on Gmail at some point in the past. So if you're interested in deep diving in any more of these tools, we certainly can do that. Google Meet, again, we've covered a lot, this idea of synchronous connection. And I do want to mention here, just because I've been in more questions, at some point we want to start thinking about transition from using Google Meet, not just for communicating for 2 people back and forth, but also as a video recorder. And the reason why I mentioned that is Screencastify at some point, right now it's free for a couple of months, but at some point it won't be. And basically Google Meet can be set up to do everything you do in Screencastify with Google Meet. It's probably 2 more clicks. Rather than 1 click, it's 2 clicks, something like that. So we will do that transition as we go forward. Google Drive, as I mentioned, unlimited storage. All the stuff that we're working on can be stored right there. It's hugely beneficial for that availability. Google Forms and Sheets. And so the idea of doing more collection. So it's not just a matter of us putting out there for forms and asking questions kind of randomly. We're actually using that data to learn from and do something with. And this is the one I want to kind of double down on, because this can be really confusing sometimes. So Google add-ons, apps, and extensions. And so what is that? You hear these terminologies thrown out there. And so I want to kind of show examples and be a little bit more deep dive into what these are. An add-on installs a feature into an existing program. So for example, if I open up Google Drive, and if I do a new Google Doc, so an add-on would add something that wasn't automatically already built into Google Docs, for example. And most things have add-ons. Gmail has add-ons. Calendar has add-ons. Spreadsheets, Docs, Forms, all these things have add-ons, these little programs that add functionality. So if this one right here, for example, if I see up at the top, it says add-ons, there is not a thesaurus built into Google Docs by default. There's not one built into it. So I can click on add-ons, get add-ons, and there's all kinds of different ones, but I can find one and say, what is DocuSign? I'll just click on one of these for a second. And if I like it, if I want to play with it, I can click individual install for myself. We typically don't install add-ons district-wide. We can if we need to, but we haven't done that. But if we find one that is so useful, really every student should have this, we can do that. We can install it. But what that add-on will do, once I install it, it will appear right here. So here's some of them. And so I can click on here, and there's my thesaurus right now. So if I have a word, it's built right into it now. You only have to do it once. Once you've done it once, you don't have to do it again. A couple other add-ons that are super handy, I think. If you're doing foreign languages, easy accents, just like it sounds like. I can click on this. And depending on which language I choose, if I choose Spanish, yep, somebody asked quickly, can you go back to initially looked up the add-ons? Absolutely. So any tool you're in, so for example, if I'm in Google Docs, which I am right now, up across the top, you'll see a little menu item that says add-ons. I can click on that. And I can choose what I want to add. So get add-ons right here. And you'll find these are all for free. I haven't ever seen one that sometimes is a donation link, but it's never cost. I'll scroll down. There's all kinds of on here. Now, I wouldn't add them all. I would kind of look through, find one that I think is interesting, add it, and if I don't like it, remove it afterwards. So it keeps it kind of lean. But once I add one of these once, then it's on there for all of them. So if I add a new Google Doc, it's already there. I don't have to add it again. Add-ons, and these are the ones I've already added before. We'll go through each of these. Pretty much everything has an add-on. Docs does, slides, spreadsheets, forms, calendar, Gmail, all those different things. They add little functionality. Now, these are third parties, meaning they're not from Google, they're from another company, but they connect. So once they're added, it's just really seamless. Thesaurus we mentioned, easy accents. Here's another good one, Casina. So if you are an English teacher, or if not, but you read a lot of text from students, a lot of documents and essays, that kind of thing, and instead of having to leave a comment for each one, This lets you leave voice comments. So on their end, students would see your comment, they hit play, they'd hear you. Sometimes it's a lot quicker and easier than trying to type a comment for every single thing. So that's what that Kazina add-on does. So add-ons, apps themselves are just brand new programs, totally connected. So for example, if I go back to my drive, if I want to add a new application, now this isn't an add-on, this isn't just adding on to an existing one, this is an entire new one. Click New, More, let's go all the way down here, and Connect More Apps. So these are applications that are a totally new application, kind of a third party, something totally outside of the Google Apps. They're connecting with your drive. And the reason why that's useful is because when they store their work or their students work on it and store something, it's going to store in Google Drive automatically. Here's an example, SketchUp. That's a great one we use in our IT department for IT. Here's a, look like I add them on. And so that means that if I open up a 3D model, I can automatically open up in SketchUp as its own app. Let's find some other ones on here. Actually, Lucidchart's another good one. So Lucidchart, if you want to add diagram, let's say you're doing mind mapping or any kind of diagramming with kids, you want them to draw something that looks kind of cool. It's not freehand. These would be like shapes that are already connected, that kind of thing, like a mind mapping example. You can add this on, and then you could use that. Lucidchart's a free program that's really helpful that way. Probably middle school up. I probably wouldn't do that with the younger guys. It's a little bit more complex for the younger guys. But these are all third-party apps. Now, if I look here, I can see which ones are, what are the ones that are useful I've got here. Pixlr Editor. Again, if I want an image editor built right into my Google Drive, that's another good one for that. All right. So as I mentioned, all the different individual components have their own version, their own add-ons. Apps are usually their own thing. They run by themselves. The other thing is if you're on a Chromebook, if you're on one of the Chromebooks that has access to the Play Store, so if you're a 7th and 8th grade teacher or some of the high school students, depending on which grade level it is, they have what's called the convertible Chromebooks that flip over and they do on a tablet mode as well. The Play Store, just like your phone, has apps itself. So if there's an app that would run on an Android phone, it would run on the Play Store, and it would run probably on the tablet for your students. And the benefit of that is some things are more geared for touch, right? So if you needed to have a touch component where they're using it as a tablet and they're able to touch a screen and move things around, that's what it's for. We have a handful of apps that are pushed out. We don't push out a ton of them, but if there's something that you think that's worthwhile, that you really want, we can do that. We can add that to the students' library. Basically, it's already there. And the final thing are extensions. So extensions are little programs, kind of like add-ons, that add functionality to the Chrome browser. Now, right now, what you're seeing, I'm actually on a PC, a Windows PC, and this is Chrome running on that. If I'm on a Chromebook, then the Chrome browser is pretty much it. That's everything. And so to find these, if I go to the web store, the Chrome web store, and again, there's a bunch of ways to get there. I just Google it just because it's just as easy. So Chrome Web Store. These are extensions that you can add to your browser. Now, there's all kinds. I have a bunch of them up here for different purposes. Again, there are hundreds, if not more than that, for all kinds of different stuff. What that means is now on my Chrome browser, I can just click on something. So, for example, I've got this one right here. This one is I will actually let me log into it. This one's called Tab Cloud. So this is an extension that it will save different sets of tabs for me. So if I have a set of tabs for different classes that I'm teaching, let's say I'm teaching a high school class or a middle school class or whatever, I can save a set of tabs, and I could just click the name right here. So this set of tabs is going to be, let's see, Tech PD. So these are these tabs that I have up right now saved. I click the little save button now. Now it's already to go. So if tomorrow, if I wanted to pull these up again, I could just click on that extension, click that little plus, and they'd all appear. There are many different ways or other extensions that do the same thing, basically. One tab is another one. I just like this one really well because it's so simple. It's pretty straightforward. It's right there. And there are all kinds of different tabs for different purposes or extensions. For example, here's a Screencastify. That is also an extension. So that doesn't work as an app by itself. That works built into Chrome. So that's kind of how this works. And there's a million other ones. So we could probably do an entire show just on extensions sometime, or an entire show just on add-ons sometimes if we want to, just because there's so many of them. What I would think is kind of poke around and play sometimes, and like if you're looking for something specific, kind of maybe Google that or look for that specifically. If you're looking to try to do something, you're just kind of mess around and you'll find tons of them. So add-ons, as we mentioned, apps, and extensions. One last one that I'll share. So this is Chromebook App Hub. And the reason why I share this one specifically is there is kind of the premise or the thought that they can't be quite as creative with Chromebooks because they don't have this, they don't have that, they don't have iMovie, they don't have GarageBand or that kind of thing. And so Chromebook App Hub with Google.com is a site specifically for ideas. So if you're like, okay, I want to do something with math, so I'm going to click on the math one, and then they'll have certain tools specifically for math-focused things. But I work with, say, middle school, so I'll go to age range, and I'll say 8 to 10, 11 to 13. So they'll kind of, it's already geared towards age levels, maybe by a learning goal, if you're looking for certain specific things, content area, all these different types of stuff. And they will give you different apps or different programs you can use and ideas and lessons around that tool specifically. And so again, just another place to look for ideas, and it's kind of cool. The hardware, as we've already kind of covered Chromebooks. I would be willing to guess right now if what your students have, most of them, if not all of them, have Chromebooks. So kind of built that into that limitation as far as what it can do, what it can't do, and you know that going into it. Again, if it's a situation where we need to push something, I know last week I had a student that I wanted to help from afar, so they have Chrome Remote Desktop turned on, so we were able to kind of go into their machine and help them out and fix the thing they were working on and undo that again. So that's the kind of thing that if you need help with, just let us know. A great site that I like to use as far as what's coming down the pike, how do I know what's coming up? There's so many things always changing. What's new.googleapps.com. The reason why I like it is because it actually has a calendar with it, and it will show you, okay, in 2 weeks, we're going to update, Google Spreadsheets, or in 3 weeks, we're going to update Google Calendar, or whatever it is. It'll kind of give you a heads up so you know what's going to be coming down the pike. So if you see changes, for example, I don't know if you noticed, but the share link in Google Docs right now is updated. The way it's shaped, looks different, which is no big deal. But if you're not prepared for that, like, oh, it looks different, what do I do here? And so that will give you kind of a heads up beforehand, so you kind of know what's coming down, what to expect. All right, so I'm going to jump back here for 1 second just to check on questions before I leave. Let's jump to the final topic of the day. Good, Chris, this is cool. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Awesome. Okay. So the last thing I wanted to share today, as far as kind of extra credit, is the idea of creating custom search engines. And you might be like, well, why would I want to do that? Well, if you have your students doing research, and this is probably more for younger kids. When I say younger, middle school down, because again, if I go to google.com and I just search for anything, I'm going to get anything. I'm going to get everything. Now I can do headings already. If I click images up here in the upper right, these are only going to be image search, which we know that's a pretty obvious one. But there's a lot of the same types of things. So like I mentioned earlier, if I do books.google.com, this will give me a subset and only search within books, not within the web in general. So there's different kind of subsets of searches. They're really based on the same thing. Custom search engine is one that you can build yourself. So if I go to CSE, custom search engine.google.com, it will connect with your account. Okay, it's going to walk you through a programmer search engine, so you can kind of customize what you want. Okay, so I'm just going to jump to the dashboard here. For example, if I wanted students, let's say I'm doing a 4th grade project, and they're going to learn about animals, and I don't want them to search the world. I want them to only search, certain websites that I pick, like National Geographic or the Smithsonian or whatever, very reputable sites that I've already done the research a little bit on. So they're not just searching the web, generally, they're kind of doing a narrow-eyed search. I can create right here. I can create a new search engine. Like I said, cse.google.com, new search engine, and I can call this one animals. Oops, I want to do national. Pull up so I make sure I have all the. National Geographic Kids, right? So that's going to give me a little bit of a subset. So it's not going to be the world, it's not going to be everything, but kids.nationalgeographic.com. So now if I put that in as my search engine, I'll do one more. I'll do kids. Kids field guides. Okay, so si.edu/kids. All right, so these are two, I know, reputable websites specifically geared to younger kids because they have right in their name, right? So if you notice right here, I can do individual pages within that. So one page, I can do the entire site, which is what I'm going to do in this case. Parts of the site, so if I want to kind of subcategories within the site, or the entire domain, which is what I'm going to do. Language, English. Name of the search engine, we're going to call this animal search. Okay, so this is just going to search these websites. And again, I could keep adding to those. I can make as many as I wanted to here. I'm going to click create. Okay, so what do I want to do with that? I can get a custom public URL. So if I get that, this link right here will go to my custom search engine. So if I search for a bear. Okay, so all the links that kids are finding from here are just within National Geographic or Smithsonian Institute. So they're going to be things that I know that are okay for kids, one, and they're going to be appropriate for what we're learning about. If I don't want to do just a link, I can also add it to the site. I can get the HTML code. So where I would put this, let's say I had your Google site, and there's one place will say get embed code. I can copy and paste this in there, and they would have it right in your site. So, you know, if Mrs. Smith has her website, I could copy and paste the HTML code, and they would have it right on there. So, hey, we're doing a project on animals. Use this search engine rather than just google.com. I highly recommend it. Is definitely worth having older kids. They need to know how to use just regular Google and narrow it down themselves. I'm not saying this absolves them from you know, knowing the process of doing good research and what's a good website, what's a bad website, that kind of stuff. But if you want it developmentally be appropriate, depending on what age level you're working with, this is worthwhile, I think, to have this. Jump back. And then the last one here, if I want to modify my search engine after I've created it, click Control Panel. And so again, I can add even more things here. Look, this is what it looks like right now. Do I want to have a description? Do I have certain keywords that pop up? All kinds of different, I know I can make it look differently too if I want to. Right here, advanced maybe. I could add multiple users. Sites to search. So again, if I want to add more sites in here, I can add more if I want to. So it's not just the first two that I put in there. So the benefit of this, like I said, I think this is probably more geared towards younger students, but it gives you, instead of searching everything, you automatically have a kind of a customized search. And as you're going forward throughout the years, you can just keep adding to that. I have one for copyrighted images, so it's not just, you know, copyright-free images. So students aren't just searching the web and hoping to find something. They're actually already searching predetermined locations, which just makes it easier for everybody, I think, going forward. Cool. All right. So looking at the questions from the other day, I think we're good for today. I was looking at the Q&A from this weekend. Just so you know, this week, we started last week talking about kind of geo places. We did Google Earth Web, we did Tour Builder, that kind of stuff. And this kind of transits us into tomorrow. We're going to be doing CoSpaces, which is a virtual reality creator. And I'm really going to tie in the idea of the old school 360 tour the kids have been working on, and see, hopefully we'll have that ready to go and be able to share that as well. But the idea is that, you know, your kids can be creating these kind of really interactive type of presentations or programming interfaces, things that, again, 6th grade on, they will have had experience with. Every 6th grader in the district, you know, older, has had some experience with CoSpaces to some degree and would be able to do something. So we'll go through the process of, you know, taking a street view image, downloading it, what does it look like, putting that into kind of a virtual world, interacting with it, adding some programming pieces of it, which will lead us into the rest of the week, which are things like, you know, 3D modeling, how you can add that, also other types of coding. And so we'll do a little bit of coding this week, just as an add-on. So we know that we're doing a lot of regular content, but this is kind of fun things that kids can play with on their own and maybe go beyond. So it may not, you know, necessarily have to be for language arts class or math class or science class or whatever, but they can take that content and do something like this with it and keep on running with it. So that's the plan for this week. It looks like, I think our questions were good. So thank you guys all for watching, and I will see you again tomorrow. Bye.